Here's a question I want you to sit with for a second. When your spouse spends money you didn't agree on, what actually hurts more? The dollar amount or the feeling that comes with it? Most people answer the money without thinking. But if you've ever lain awake doing math in your head at 1 a.m., not because you're broke, but because you feel unseen, unheard, disrespected, you already know the real answer. It's not the money. It's the feeling that your partner's choices keep overriding your sense of safety. This is one of the most common relationship struggles nobody talks about honestly. We talk about money fights. We don't talk about what those fights are actually doing to your nervous system, your trust, your identity in the relationship. We treat spending conflict like a budgeting problem. Spreadsheet it, categorize it, set a limit, problem solved. Except it never quite is solved, is it? Because being married to a spender isn't really a math problem. It's an emotional one wearing a financial costume. In the next few minutes, I want to walk you through what's actually happening when you're partnered with someone who spends differently than you. Psychologically, relationally, financially, and more importantly, how you protect your own peace inside that dynamic, regardless of whether your partner ever changes. Because here's the hard truth we need to start with. You may never fully change a spender, but you can absolutely change how much power their spending has over your peace of mind. That distinction is the whole game. Let's get into it. Part 1. Why this hurts so much more than it should. Let's start by validating something. If you're the partner who saves, plans, and tracks, and you're married to someone who spends freely, you are not overreacting. Financial researchers have a term for this: financial infidelity. It describes situations where one partner hides purchases, debt, or spending habits from the other. Studies on money and marriage consistently find that financial disagreements are among the strongest predictors of relationship dissatisfaction and divorce, not necessarily because couples don't have enough money, but because of what spending behavior represents. And that's the key reframe I want you to hold on to throughout this video. Money is never just money inside a relationship. It's a stand-in for security, respect, autonomy, and trust. When your partner spends in a way that feels reckless or unilateral to you, your brain doesn't just process, "we have less money now." It processes, "My partner made a decision that affects both of us without considering me." That's not a budgeting violation. That's a trust violation. And your body responds to trust violations the same way it responds to other threats. With vigilance, with anxiety, with that tight feeling in your chest when you check the bank app. This is why just talk about money more advice often falls flat. Couples who fight about finances are frequently not actually fighting about the dollar figure. They're fighting about what the dollar figure means. To the spender, a purchase might mean joy, spontaneity, self-expression, or stress relief. To the saver, an unplanned purchase might mean danger, instability, or being unseen. Two people can look at the exact same receipt and have two completely different emotional experiences of it. Neither one is delusional. They're just running different software. Part 2. Understanding the spender. Without excusing the behavior, I want to be careful here, because there's a difference between understanding someone's spending patterns and excusing harmful behavior. You can hold both truths. Your partner's spending may come from a real psychological place, and it can still be something that needs to change. Financial psychologists who study money behavior often describe spending patterns as money scripts, unconscious beliefs about money that usually form in childhood and run on autopilot for the rest of a person's life. Someone who grew up in scarcity might spend impulsively as an adult because money triggers anxiety, and spending temporarily numbs that anxiety. Someone who grew up watching a parent hoard money out of fear might spend freely as a kind of rebellion against that fear. Someone who associates love with gift-giving might spend on others as their primary way of expressing affection, because that's literally the language they were taught. None of this means the behavior is acceptable if it's damaging the relationship, but it does mean that lecturing a spender about discipline rarely works, because you're trying to logic your way through an emotional pattern. It's a bit like telling someone who bites their nails from anxiety to just stop. The behavior isn't really about the nails, and spending often isn't really about the purchase. There's also a simpler, less dramatic explanation that's worth naming honestly. Sometimes a person is a spender because no one has ever made the budget feel like a shared project instead of a punishment. If every financial conversation in the relationship has been the saver policing the spender has had no incentive to engage. They've only ever experienced budgeting as criticism, never as collaboration. And one more important distinction. There's a real difference between a partner who enjoys spending and a partner whose spending is compulsive or addictive. Compulsive spending, sometimes called problematic shopping behavior, typically involves spending despite negative consequences, using purchases to regulate difficult emotions, and feeling unable to stop even when the person genuinely wants to. If you suspect that's what you're dealing with, that's not a communicate better issue. That may call for professional support, the same way any compulsive behavior would. Part 3. The cost you're not tracking. Most advice about spender-saver relationships focuses entirely on dollars. Build a budget, set a spending limit, automate savings. We'll absolutely get there. But I want to spend real time on the cost that doesn't show up on a bank statement. Because if you only fix the money, you can fix the money and still lose the peace. The vigilance tax. When you're constantly monitoring a partner's spending, checking accounts, doing mental math, bracing for the next surprise charge, your nervous system stays in a low-grade state of alert. This is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. You're not just managing a budget. You're managing a threat detection system. And threat detection systems are not built for sustained, years-long use. This is how resentment quietly accumulates. Not from one big blow-up, but from thousands of small moments of, I have to check, that never fully relax. The identity erosion. Many people in this dynamic slowly become the strict one, the controlling one, the no-fun one. A role they didn't choose but got assigned by default because someone had to hold the line. Over time, you can start resenting not just your partner's spending, but the version of yourself the relationship has made you become. That's a profound, often unspoken loss. The loneliness inside partnership. Financial decisions are supposed to be one of the places where partnership shows up most concretely. We build something together. When spending feels unilateral, it can create a strange kind of loneliness even while sharing a bed, a home, a life. You start making contingency plans privately. You start protecting yourself instead of building with your partner. That shift from we to me protecting myself within we is one of the quietest relationship killers there is. Naming these costs matters because if your only goal is fix the spending, you might win that battle and still feel terrible because the vigilance, the identity shift, and the loneliness don't disappear just because the numbers balance. Protecting your peace has to be its own explicit goal, not an automatic side effect of better budgeting. Part 4. What actually changes spending and what doesn't. Let's talk about what tends to work, based on what relationship and financial researchers consistently find, and what tends to backfire. What backfires? Surveillance and shame. Going through receipts like a detective, weaponizing past mistakes and current arguments. Public call-outs in front of family or friends. These might produce short-term compliance, but they tend to produce long-term secrecy. A partner who feels surveilled doesn't usually become more transparent. They become better at hiding. This is one of the most consistent findings in research on financial infidelity. Secrecy thrives in environments of judgment, not in environments of safety.
Separating the system from the person. Instead of you always overspend, which attacks identity, effective couples tend to frame it as our system isn't working for us, which attacks the process instead. This sounds like semantics, but it changes whether your partner shows up defensive or collaborative. Structural guardrails instead of willpower battles. Willpower is an exhaustible resource. This is well established in behavioral psychology. Asking a spender to simply have more self-control indefinitely is asking them to win a war of attrition against their own brain, forever. Structures don't get tired. This is why approaches like separate, no questions asked, discretionary accounts for each partner tend to outperform approaches based purely on permission and guilt. If each person has an agreed amount of money that's truly theirs to spend without justification, you remove the daily friction point entirely. The big shared money is protected by agreement. The personal money is protected by autonomy. Both partners get something they need. Naming the actual fear underneath the rule. Instead of, we need a $200 limit on unplanned purchases, try getting to what's underneath it. I need to know that big decisions are made together because that's what makes me feel safe in this partnership. Rules without an articulated emotional reason behind them feel arbitrary and are easier to quietly break. Rules connected to a named need feel meaningful. Money dates instead of money ambushes. Couples therapists and financial counselors frequently recommend regular, low-stakes check-ins, sometimes even outside the house, over coffee, specifically because financial conversations that happen only during conflict get permanently associated with conflict. If the only time you talk about money is when you're upset, your nervous system starts treating "we need to talk about money" as a threat alert before a single word is said. Part 5. Protecting your peace. Regardless of whether they change. Now here's the part most videos skip, and it's the part I actually think matters most. Everything above is about improving the dynamic. But you cannot fully control whether your partner changes. You can only fully control how you protect yourself inside the relationship as it currently exists. So let's talk about that directly. Get financial visibility, not financial control. There's a difference between wanting to control every purchase your partner makes, which is corrosive to almost any relationship, and wanting basic visibility into your shared financial reality. You are allowed to know your full financial picture, shared debts, account balances, what's coming due. This isn't about restricting your partner. It's about not being financially blindsided, which is a completely reasonable boundary regardless of how the spending conversation goes. Build a financial floor that doesn't depend on your partner's cooperation. This might mean maintaining your own emergency savings, your own credit history, your own income stream, if at all possible. This is not about distrust or planning an exit. It's the financial equivalent of knowing where the fire exits are. You hope you never need them, and having them doesn't mean you expect a fire. Financial counselors frequently recommend that every adult, married or not, maintain some independent financial footing simply because life is unpredictable and full dependency removes your options in a crisis. This one is subtle but important. If you find yourself feeling embarrassed, anxious, or somehow responsible every time your partner overspends, as if their choices are a referendum on you, that's worth examining. You can love someone, be affected by their choices, advocate strongly for change, and still hold the line that their relationship with money is ultimately theirs to work on. You are not your partner's money. Their spending says something about them. It does not have to define your sense of safety in yourself. Decide your non-negotiables in advance, calmly, not in the heat of an argument. This is one of the most underrated peace-protecting tools there is. In a calm moment, not after discovering a surprise charge, decide what you actually will and won't accept long-term. Maybe it's large purchases get discussed beforehand. Maybe it's shared debt doesn't get touched without both signatures. Maybe it's if spending happens secretly again after this conversation, you'll involve a financial counselor or therapist together. Deciding these boundaries in advance means you're not improvising your self-respect in real time during a fight, which is when people tend to either cave or explode. Let go of the fantasy of total agreement. Many savers quietly hold on to the belief that if they just explain it well enough, find the right chart, have the perfect conversation, their partner will fully convert to their way of thinking about money. That fantasy held too tightly becomes its own source of suffering. Some amount of difference in how you and your partner relate to money may simply be permanent. The goal isn't necessarily to become identical. The goal is to build a system you can both live inside without one person constantly losing peace to protect the budget, or the budget constantly being sacrificed to protect peace. Know when this needs outside help. If spending has crossed into hidden debt, lying, draining of joint accounts without disclosure, or behavior that resembles compulsion rather than preference. This is genuinely a moment for a financial therapist, couples counselor, or financial advisor. Not because you've failed at handling it yourselves, but because some patterns are difficult to untangle from inside the relationship. Seeking that support isn't a sign the relationship is failing. It's often the thing that allows it to keep working. If you take only one idea from everything we've covered today, let it be this: you can love a spender, stay married to a spender, and still refuse to let their spending dictate your inner state. Those two things are not in conflict. Protecting your peace doesn't mean controlling your partner, and it doesn't mean numbing yourself to the impact of their choices either. It means building enough structure, enough visibility, and enough self-respect that your sense of safety isn't held hostage by someone else's relationship with money, even someone you love deeply. Money will keep being a place where you and your partner have to negotiate, communicate, and sometimes disagree. That's normal. What's not sustainable is silently absorbing all the anxiety yourself while calling it keeping the peace. Real peace isn't the absence of financial difference in a marriage. It's having a system and a self sturdy enough to hold that difference without breaking.